I'm Richard Gearhart, an intellectual property attorney specializing in patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart, not an attorney, but I have a couple of startups and I do the marketing for Gearhart Law.
Welcome, everybody, to Passage to Profit, the road to entrepreneurship, where we talk with small businesses, entrepreneurs, and discuss the intellectual property that helps them flourish. And today we have a very special guest, Karen Laos. She's a confidence cultivator and communication expert, and we are really looking forward to having her on the show.
And then we have someone that I really need to connect with, Tsikki Thau. She is a meditation and stress management expert. And I love some of the things that are listed in her bio that she does.
I would really love it if you could learn to manage your stress.
Well, this is how he manages his stress. Our next presenter, Morgan Hancock, has bourbon.
Guilty as charged.
She has not a bourbon with heart that combines people's love of bourbon with their love of art. It's really cool. I can hardly wait to hear about this.
But first, it's time for IP in the news. And we just have another lawsuit today where there was a big jury verdict.
But there was a jury verdict. So I don't think that people realize all the time that intellectual property issues like patent infringement, trademark infringement can actually go before a jury of people like a criminal case can.
Right. And it's kind of interesting because patents are so complex and convoluted. And if you haven't read a patent, you probably don't really understand the point I'm trying to make here. But it is complicated stuff. And for a jury to be able to understand it and then render a verdict is a pretty amazing thing. In this case, who was it? AT&T and Finesse. They got into a dispute about some satellite technology for radio towers, and so it's all very technical. But it is important to appreciate that these cases do go to court, and patents play an important role in safeguarding technology. So
if you have an important invention and somebody else infringes on it, you can recover damages.
Absolutely. So now it's time for our Richard's Roundtable, and I'm going to ask each of our distinguished guests their opinion, or if you have a question about intellectual property, we're happy to field that. So, Karen, welcome to the show. So good to see you. What are your thoughts about this lawsuit?
Thanks. Well, it definitely reminds me the importance of protecting yourself and doing everything that you can to do that. And as a newer entrepreneur just launching during COVID, my eyes have been opened much more than normal. I would say in my past about the importance of that. And so I first of all think, wow, okay, what are all the things that we as entrepreneurs need to do to take care of ourselves, let alone these huge organizations, companies and such. So I think it's important. That's what I'll say.
I appreciate what you're saying and how you tie that into entrepreneurship and starting a new business. There are lots of things that an entrepreneur can do in order to protect their investment. So you can protect your investment in your brand through trademarks, creative works, through copyrights. Those are relatively inexpensive, and there are opportunities for you to protect the newness or the novelty or the uniqueness of your business. You may not be inventing a tech product, so maybe patents are not the right solution for you, but there are other opportunities to protect the intellectual capital. So, Kenya?
Yeah, well, I was going to say real briefly here that the power of making sure that all of the time that you spend on your work and then it could be gone in a flash, or you have to spend a ton of money to get it back. To me, that's the thing we want to avoid. So that's, as you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, all the time that I've spent on these things, I don't want it to get not taken away.
Yeah. And I have to emphasize, it's important to check, especially in the world of trademarks. If you're selecting a name for a business, you may pick a name, you may find a URL that's available, you may even be able to register the LLC at the state level. But somebody can have a federal trademark that is a problem for you. And so you want to know that before you invest a lot of money into your branding, your advertising, if packaging, if you're packaging things. You don't want somebody to come out of the woodwork 2 or 3 years down the road after you've put all of that effort into creating your product. So it's really important to check with an attorney before you get too far down the road and make sure that the path is clear.
Right. We went through that. We named the show something else in the beginning. Kenya had a really great name and it was trademarked. So we had to change the name.
We
of
had
the
to
show.
change the name, but I'm glad we did.
We
So,
checked before we got going, right?
Kenya, what are your thoughts on this lawsuit and intellectual property in general, maybe?
Well, you kind of answered my question. And because we're edutainment, right? I wanted you to give the audience some examples of what like intellectual capital is. And then how can like the little guy or like the little entrepreneur feel empowered if they find themselves in a situation like this?
Well, I think, there's no guarantees with intellectual property. They're a business tool that you can use to help defend yourself. It does take resources, at least some minimal level of resources to challenge somebody else. The value of, for example, a trademark registration, though, is hopefully that you register your trademark and somebody else comes along after you and they also check, right? And they say, okay, well, I'm not going to take that trademark because somebody else already has it. And that's what we tell our clients. We check, we do a search. Somebody else has the same mark, then we'll steer them away from it. And so it protects you without you ever actually having to fight with somebody. And so I think that's a really important point. It's worth registering it, even if you don't think you're ever going to willing to spend the money to get involved in a lawsuit.
But sometimes even just a cease and desist letter will be enough,
Right.
right? To
Absolutely.
make the other person stop using your branding.
Absolutely. So Morgan, what are your thoughts on all of this?
So I don't know if you guys know this, but intellectual property is actually a big part of my life. I'm in multiple different ways, just with Bourbon with Heart, when it comes to art, owning art, even images of your art, is a big deal. I mean, I could have an artist paint something, but and then someone can even buy that, but they don't then own the rights to that image necessarily, or to resell that image or to use it commercially. So there's a lot there. But beyond that, and I'll be very careful what all I say about this, but I'm in the middle of, been for a couple of years, almost a couple of years, quite a large intellectual property situation. I am a commercial real estate agent, and I'm selling Claudia Sanders' Dinner House, which is the wife of Colonel Sanders. And I'm selling his home and of 25 years and his business. And so as you can imagine, we've had to discuss that with KFC quite a bit.
Interesting.
Oh, I bet.
I
Yeah.
can imagine. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, part of the value of the house is the legacy, but
Oh, the name, Claudia
and the name,
Sanders.
right?
And it's a chicken restaurant.
Right. So,
That's
Tsikki?
sounds like fun though.
It's a lot. It's a lot of fun, but some people, people tread very lightly around KFC, who's owned by Yum, which is a
Yeah.
very large company.
You never got the recipe for the 11 herbs and spices, did you? Was that part of the deal?
That's a whole nother one. Yes, and that lawsuit was settled, and I can't say much else about that.
Oh wow! So you're a real insider.
Oh, we're
Tsikki?
deep into it. Yeah.
Tsikki, what are your thoughts on all this stuff?
My thoughts on all this is that it is the perfect timing for me, especially in the midst of branding. And this is all very new to me. I don't have a lot of knowledge of it, but I'm definitely open and excited about this. And I will definitely need you guys in the near future.
Oh,
well,
excellent.
yeah.
I think we need you too.
I'm glad we have your email. So.
Oh, thanks. It's all in the timing, right?
Great.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely. So that was amazing. I guess the takeaway from this is if you're starting a new business, you want to make sure that you pay attention to the intellectual property piece at some appropriate point. and it can help you protect your business, protect your ideas, and so that's part of the reason why we're doing the show, is really to get the word out there on these topics. So it's time to move to our guest, Karen Laos, and she's a communication expert and confidence cultivator. And she also has a podcast called Ignite Your Confidence. And Karen, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what motivated you to get into this in the first place.
Thank you. Well, I'm on a mission to reach 10 million women in the next 10 years, specifically to eradicate self-doubt and help women to speak up. That is the one problem that I solve in the marketplace, is to help women speak up so they stop missing opportunities. And I got into it because that's my story. For too long, I held back from sharing my ideas, even though I was in a leadership role in the corporate world and had a really wonderful job traveling all over the world and speaking at all these amazing brands like Google and Facebook and such. And yet, when I would be sitting in leadership meetings with my own peers, I would feel intimidated a lot and hold back from sharing what I really wanted to share at times. So I thought, you know what, this is a problem and I need to solve it. So that's exactly.
The Gearhart Law Management team wishes I would do that.
I was going to say it. I wasn't going to say it, but you brought it up, and Elizabeth has no problem holding back. That is for sure.
So I want to kind of jump in, because there's one question I really want to ask you about. We have notes, of course, from our wonderful Alicia, who manages the program, but you have a talking point, which is 9 words that undermine your credibility and what to say instead. Just even a few of those. I would love to hear this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll give an example. They're in 2 for 1, just and little. A lot of times we say things like, I just want to share a little tip. And it diminishes our credibility, as opposed to, I want to share a tip. Or you share the tip. You don't have any of the precursors. But I find then, especially, I notice, and for those of you that are able to see us, I'm hunching a little bit when I say, I just want to share a little tip, or I just have a little question to ask, almost like the message that it sends underneath the surface is, I'm just a little person and I'm not really worth anything. And that may be a little over the top when I say it like that, but it's being mindful of those things. And of course, apologizing unnecessarily is a huge one. And instead of saying, I'm sorry, saying, excuse me, or thank you for understanding. I was in the grocery store the other day, and 3 women, including myself, were in an aisle together. None of us bumped into each other, but it was this, oh, excuse me. No, it wasn't excuse me. I've trained myself to say excuse me, but people were saying, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, what are you sorry for? We haven't even, I don't know. It's like, I'm sorry that I entered this aisle that you were in. That's how it comes across. So those are a few of them. What do you think?
I think it's kind of your first one, especially, is like, do you mind if I ask you a question? You're like, well, you just did.
But what I'm getting is that languaging is important, and that's part of presenting yourself as a confident communicator is picking the right words. And so how do you work with people in order to sort of get them out of these habits? What kinds of things do you do?
Yeah, the number one tool is to record. So it's simply recording, seeing how you sound. So usually when I start working with a client one-on-one, it'll be a 1-minute intro. Just, hey, just say something for about a minute about yourself. And then we watch it back. And it's fascinating because I'd say the biggest thing, first of all, it's incredible awareness, probably like all of us on here know. When you're on video, and anybody listening, I would say that the majority of the human race doesn't like to see themselves recorded. But what I find fascinating, even though people sort of curl over when I say that and they go, no, I don't want to watch myself. But that's what people come back with and say, can we do more video recording? And I say that one of the things is people catastrophize how they're going to look or sound in advance, because we're naturally all our own worst critics. And yet when people watch it back, when we do it together, they're surprised at their strengths, because I always start with celebrating the strengths that people have. But then going back to the words, sometimes it's the words that we say that we should simply eliminate, similar to things like and ah that aren't obviously words, but other words like or so, even phrases at the end of the day, and these things that we say repeatedly that get in the way and diminish our credibility.
That is so true. Richard says, and I'm perfect. No, not really. Because I say so. I realize, like, especially if you transcribe your videos,
Ah,
I'll be like, so. And I'm like, "Ugh."
Well, I think though, just to amplify what Karen is saying, it's important to listen to yourself. And I actually at one point had a chart, an Excel spreadsheet, where I would talk extemporaneously for 30 seconds. I was trying to train myself to be a better radio personality. And I would go back and listen, and I would mark all of the time. I would had a column for so's and a column for knows, and I would track that. And over time, I eventually got better at being able to present without using those intermediary words. The problem, though, for me was that if I lose awareness of that, or if I don't do it for a while, I'll go back into old habits again. And so
yeah,
I think it's important. I think I love your message, and I think it's very important, but it's something you have to kind of stay with. I think maybe for some people it's a
absolutely.
permanent transformation, but for me it hasn't been. So
Yeah, I've never seen it permanent, including myself. It's like that carnival game whack-a-mole where you get rid of one, you might get rid of and but then another one comes up. And I remember once co-facilitating with a colleague, and at the end of the training, she goes, "Do you know that you say the reality is all the time?" And I thought, what? Like, what a weird phrase to say. But then I started hearing it. I would be facilitating, and the reality is, eye communication is so important. The reality is, I'm saying it, and that's actually a really good reminder of just what you said, just the tracking, the awareness. You've got to find what works for you. The recording, other people, because I feel like that if you aren't, for whatever reason, if you aren't recording and listening to yourself back, which of course is still my number one recommendation, but the second part of that can work in conjunction with the recording is getting objective feedback from people that you're around and people that you trust, that you can ask, "Hey, did I say anything that was distracting?" Or even better yet, "Hey, I'm working on eliminating so." And that, by the way, Elizabeth, is still mine. And I continue to work on it.
I know,
But it's so
fun.
helpful to ask other people. And then, of course, the transcripts
Yeah. Oh boy. Well,
are quite revealing.
Yeah, I think too, if you can take yourself outside of yourself a little bit when you're watching this and pretend like you're watching somebody else, you're going to be a
Yes.
lot nicer to somebody else than you're going to be to yourself. But
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask Kenya.
yeah, I was just going to say, Kenya, you
Kenya.
must have some comments here.
Kenya's like perfect on the radio. She never does any of this bad stuff, and I don't know how she does it.
God, I'm not, but thank you. I feel like I say, a lot. Now, when Richard said he says, I'm like, I say that a lot too. I guess one of my questions for you is, as women, how do we get over the jitters of going into an environment where we have to be bold and we have to speak our mind? Like, how do you get past the emotionals? Because I feel like we're emotional creatures, and sometimes we carry that into conversations. So, like, what is your advice to get past the emotional piece of like what challenges us sometimes?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. So the first thing that I would recommend that I find super helpful to tackle that self-doubt is to ask 5 people that you know and trust to give you 5 qualities that are positive about you. The strengths, qualities, something that will help you to be reminded and see themes that perhaps you didn't even know that were part of you, because we carry ourselves with us wherever we go. So we don't always see these things. And that, I have found, can be a really huge confidence booster. And the other thing that I would recommend is something that I call a celebration portfolio. It's very similar, and that is to collect testimonials no, thank you cards. I actually I started one back when I was first beginning my career. I'd gotten that advice from someone, and I find it wonderful, especially when you're having an off day and you're not feeling very confident, to go back and look at all the things that people have said. And that could be a great reminder for sure that can help you. And then at a very tactical level, specific to using our physiology, is to recognize that there's no difference between nervousness and excitement in our bodies. So we can trick our brains from a neuroscience perspective to say, I'm so excited to be bold in this meeting, or I'm thrilled, as opposed to saying, oh, I'm nervous, and bringing all those negative messages into ourselves.
And I want to say, though, Kenya, it's not only women who are nervous when it comes time to speak up. Maybe men handle it differently. I don't want to generalize about stereotypes, but sticking yourself and putting yourself out there with an idea in front of a group of people I don't think is easy for anybody, unless you're the leader and you have nothing to fear. But and even if you're the leader, even if you're the leader, you can say something wrong that damages something or sets the team off on the wrong track. So I don't think it's ever really easy if you're putting yourself out there and doing something where you're trying to move a group forward, right? And there's always going to be something, and that's why we need Tsikki, who is a meditation and stress management expert, because in these situations where we want to do those things, but it's it's uncomfortable sometimes.
Well, and I want to say I was so excited to have Karen on the show today, because the keynote speaker topics listed here are all things that light a fire under me. I want to go to the 3 C's to command any room with confidence. What are those?
Oh, am I giving those away? No, I'm just kidding.
I
might need to consult my IP attorney.
You're listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest, Karen Laos. And we'll be back right after this message.
Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, Road to Entrepreneurship with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, and our special guest today, Karen Laos. And she has already given us some incredible advice. I'm not going to say the word "so," for instance. But I was asking her before the break, what are the 3 C's, the letter C, to command any room with confidence? And she's a little reluctant to share all her secrets, but maybe just the tip of the iceberg, Karen.
I'm happy to share. I believe in abundance. Well, I'll give you the 3, and then I'll give you one of my favorite tips: clarity, credibility, and the third one is a phrase: claim your power. Clarity. Why I recommend that is really important. Well, I think we all know why it's important, but one of my favorite tips is how to stop rambling and get to the point. Because I'm a recovering rambler myself, I have to fully say that in disclosure. But one of the things that people often ask is, what do I do when I get off topic? And the first thing I always say is, well, the first thing you want to do is start with the point. A lot of us give this extraneous detail, or we do a data dump of information, and people don't know why they're listening to you. And remembering to start, what is the lead of your story? What is the immediate point that you want to get out at the top of the meeting? And then from there, if you get lost, stop, pause, and say out loud, and my point is this. Or you could simply pause, gather your thoughts, and move to the point. But I prefer the external speaking personally. That works for me best, because when I do that, I find that not only does it help me focus, it helps my audience know, oh, she has a point and we're going somewhere. It brings us all back.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you want to say where you're going with the conversation, and then you can fill in details later. But
so what do you do if you lose credibility with people? Can you ever get that back?
Yes, I'd say so. I think about all the examples, and of course, none is immediately coming to mind for me, but there are so many examples in life where you think about leaders, whether it's politicians or leaders of companies, that have recovered even after massive lawsuits or things. And in fact, I don't know all the details around all these things, but like Martha Stewart, for example, look at what happened with her, and she's rebuilt her brand again and again and again. And I think that the more that we can focus on recovery and going, okay, what do I need to do in that case? And so to me, it's about rebuilding trust. And there are various ways that you can do that for sure. But a big part of it is being authentic. And that's when I'm just being real, being candid. And I'd say that that's becoming, obviously, in the last, 10, 20 years has become even more valued. I don't think that it wasn't valued before per se, but it is much more prominent in the marketplace now. And you think about Brene Brown, her book and all that she does around Dare to Lead, and that courage and vulnerability. I could go on and on here, but that to me is the most important thing, is rebuilding trust. And that's just critical.
And I think if you want to use the Martha Stewart example, you better be pretty brave too and willing to put yourself out there again.
Yes.
But
yeah.
if you have the problem is understanding why you lost credibility in the first place, and then really understanding that, and then you can, I think, work toward building trust.
I think part of her success coming back though was a lot of people didn't feel like she deserved to go to prison for that, because there are a lot of other people doing exactly the same thing who didn't go.
Right.
And
And
it was just like crazy. It's like somebody's got something out for her.
I completely agree with you.
So
well, I have
no, go ahead.
I have a personal example of that, which was something that actually made me early on in my career almost pivot in a different direction. And I'm so grateful that I didn't. I was a corporate trainer working for Gap Inc., and I had a pretty high stakes talk that I was giving. And I thought I did fine. I mean, I honestly didn't even know that there was a problem. And when I sat down right after giving my talk, my boss looked at me and said, very nervously, well, how do you think you did? And I wanted to say, just tell me. I didn't do well, obviously. And anyway, I'm still a little nebulous about what happened, but all I can tell you is this. She said, you've got to be more organized, more prepared. You should have come earlier. You should have been here to mingle with the client, all these things that I didn't even know. But the point is, it caused me at first to say to my direct boss, the immediate supervisor, I said, do you think that I should just quit this altogether? Maybe I'm not cut out to be a speaker or a trainer. And she said, well, you're going to let one situation get in your way? No, you go to town. It's your choice, but you got to build this back up if you want to do this. And I think you should. And she helped instill confidence in me. And so the next time I made sure to do my due diligence. And a year later, I remember the boss that had looked at me and said, how do you think you did? She came up to me and said, I want you to know I've seen all the changes that you've made, and you are just so much, like, I'm hearing so many amazing things. So it was one of those personal stories where I'm really happy that I pushed into it, and it was very humbling for me, I must admit, especially with a lack of clear direction, but then just going, okay, what do I need to do here to up my game? So I was able to rebuild that trust. And
you deserve a lot of credit for that, because other people, like probably me, if I were in that situation, this person is just being too harsh, too critical. None of that's important. And I may not have heard that feedback and acted on it. Right. And so, but you did, and you made changes, and obviously it worked out really well. But you have to be you have to be receptive to that feedback and willing to take it seriously, and you did that. So
thank you.
I think that's amazing.
So Kenya, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on the opposite end of the spectrum, sometimes when women are too boisterous or bold, we're labeled, I won't say the word on the radio, but we're labeled as such. And
Does
so
it begin with a B?
It does begin with a B.
Right. I agree, Kenya, 100%.
And it's so frustrating, because when we as women say something, right, sometimes it's just not adhered to. And then when a man says something, they're like a hero. And we're so criticized sometimes on like how we articulate things. So us being strong and being bold oftentimes gets classified as the other word we were talking about. So what is the distinction, and how can we as women move past that label?
Yeah. Well, we're always balancing, like you said, that I would classify it as connection and credibility, where if you're too connected, which you could define as warm, more nurturing, and if you've got too much on that credibility, competent side, I do think that they can be integrated. So hear me when I say that. But if we're looking at them as two extremes, the other side being that strong, bold, as you say, so it's remembering that those are the things, that tightrope that we're always walking. And the way that I look at it is, if you can continue, if you can have that strength in your voice and have a lightness to your expression. Now, I know that this is sounding, it might sound very trite, just, well, is that really all that it is? No, but that is a good place to start, because a lot of times what I notice is when people get emboldened, and first of all, I want to say, I know the world is not fair. So that's important to say right out loud, because I've had people say, how do we change this? Well, we can change it by continuing to speak up, but do it in a way that isn't coming across as I'm resentful, I'm bitter, I'm angry. I do think that you can still come across, and I think any human being should come across this way, with kindness as well as directness. Now, of course, the challenge is still there. And so being able to navigate with being able to look at and go, okay, how do I come across? Maybe I come across with this furrowed brow facial expression where I look really upset. Now, there is an element of that's the way society is, but there's also the element of what can I do to change that? And that's where I come back to getting feedback, whether it's from other people around you or whether it's from the actual video recording that you see. It's a combination of factors, and there isn't just one recipe. But I am curious to hear what all of your thoughts are about that, because that's why I say, and even in my answer, you'll notice there's a variety of different possibilities here. But I do think that I'm amazed at how many people that are criticized for some of this. When I work with them, I see some of the blind spots that they have of, you could actually shift that, and you might get a different result. You might not, but you might.
Right. I'm known as two things, either a light breeze or a tornado. So those are the two categories. Got to find the medium, I guess.
Well, a lot of times women will say, I get interrupted all the time. And so I say, well, okay, that might be a very legitimate fact. I hear it. I've been in that situation myself. The question I ask is, how are you starting when you speak? That's the thing to listen to. So first of all, going back to the light turn, what did you say? The light breeze? Because a light breeze is someone who starts with, okay, so everybody, we're going to start the meeting with this versus here's how we're going to start the meeting. Here's the agenda. Here's what we're going for. It's such a different feel. And I find that more often than not, women tend to be in that lighter breeze. And so if people feel like you're a pushover from the beginning, they're going to interrupt you, because most people don't have time for that. And a lot of times we don't see how we're coming across. And specifically with women's voices on the opposite side, we don't often hear, there are very few, but some women that talk extremely loudly, and they have this shrill tone in their voice. And so even just simple things like breathing exercises to help you with your voice quality. And now obviously all of these things take work. It goes back to what you said much earlier, Richard, of just, you got to keep in this. Yeah.
You got to keep in it and pay attention to how you communicate. So just to follow up what you said, and I think this is true for men and women. So is that the more in the business environment, there's different types of communication that are used at different times. So you, for the most part, want to maintain a neutral sounding tone when you're discussing specific issues. Like you're almost looking at the problem objectively, and you're not necessarily injecting your personality into it. There are times when you're trying to motivate people or you're trying to reach them emotionally. And then there are times when you use your interpersonal skills to achieve certain goals, just rallying the troops or uh, showing that you're unhappy with something. And so being a good business communicator is knowing when to be the objective neutral person and or being the more emotional person. And yeah, I think that comes with practice, but I think there are times when people step into a business situation and they're personalizing it, or they are carrying this baggage with them of previous negative experiences or previous positive experiences. And so then it comes off as a distraction as opposed to focusing on, well, here is the problem, this is what we need to do.
Right. And I just want to say quickly, just, oh, there's that
Oh,
word.
there's that word.
The awareness is there. I love it.
What I want to say quickly is I feel like Karen has captured those nebulous kind of hidden secret things that are the difference between somebody who's just kind of making it and somebody who really has made it. Like, I don't know, who's somebody famous, who's well-spoken, Gail King or George Stephanopoulos or something. There's secret little power things that people like that know and do in everyday life. The rest of us have to learn. And I think there's a lot to learn from you.
Well, thank you. I'd like to share one that many people don't think too much about, but it highly connects to credibility. And that is when we end a statement as a question or a comma. And the slang term for it is upspeak or uptalk. Mm-hmm. And this I have seen in all genders. And I have coached thousands of people over the years, and it happens mostly when we do an introduction. And the truth is, what ends up happening is we don't punctuate the spoken word. So, for example, we say things like, "Hi, I'm Karen Laos, and I'm originally from Minneapolis, but now I live in San Francisco." Versus, "Hi, I'm Karen Laos. I am originally from Minneapolis, but now I live in San Francisco."
Wow.
So what did you do?
That was huge.
Yeah, that was really cool. So how do you teach somebody to do that? It's just modeling it for them and then having them do it?
It's the video recording or audio recording. I do a combination of both. But the first step is to recognize that you're saying sentences as opposed to one run-on sentence. Because what I do when I record them is then we as is typical, most people say our name with a question mark. And I would encourage anybody listening to start hearing yourself when you introduce yourself, because usually we say our name with a comma or a question. And if we say it with conviction, and again, all we're doing is punctuating. So just like you'd write an email or a text, or well, text is probably a little different, but if we're writing an email or some document, you're putting periods, commas, exclamation points, what have you. And so the first step is to notice, okay, how much am I doing this? And most people's introductions tend to be that run-on sentence, so it never ends. So the first thing is to recognize it, record yourself and I always recommend in a real environment as much as possible. I do recognize there are confidentiality issues at times, but when you can record yourself and then listen back, that can be very helpful. And notice, am I actually putting a period here, or is it just another comma that's leading to another thing? And when I worked at Gap Inc., I remember we actually called it the sing-songy voice. And we would even
well, Richard tells me we're getting to the end of this, but Karen, first of all, do you take private clients right now to help them improve?
I do. I usually do speaking engagements, most often in the corporate world, but I do take a handful of individual clients for sure.
Okay. And then what is your website? And can you please spell your name?
Yes, absolutely. It's it's KarenLaos.com. And that is spelled KarenLaos.com.
Well, thank you very much. This has been fascinating. We hope you can stick around for the rest of the show. Listeners, you are listening to Passage to Profit, The Road to Entrepreneurship with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest, Karen Laos. And there's lots more fun to come up. So please stay with us.
And welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, our special guest, Karen Laos. Just amazing woman, really is on the tip of the spear when it comes to communication. And I feel like I learned a lot. So
She knows a lot of secrets.
she
to
has a lot of
sounding
secrets.
better.
Good
Yes.
IP is the way we like to call it. And now
Yes.
it's time for Power Move. Kenya?
Yes. So for Power Move today, we have Shonda Prescott Weinstein. And due to lack of representation in the world of scientific research, and with Black women who study physics being undercited and overlooked, she decided to lead a multi-year effort to create a list of all the professional publications by Black women with PhDs and physics-related disciplines, with the goal of illuminating these women and their work. And her database just got released last month. It has over 4,000 entries with published works by over 180 women, and it covers 50 years of research, and it's believed to be the first database of any field of science that's focused on the work of Black women. So she is our power move for today.
Well, that's near and dear to our hearts, being intellectual property people, and we're glad that she's found a way to identify women who deserve recognition.
And
Well-
Elizabeth is a scientist too, so that's one of the
Yes.
reasons why I picked it.
Oh,
'Cause
thank
I
you,
have-
Kenya. But yeah, that I have to say that is very impressive. And I think that the kind of the stereotypical vision of people in this society is the scientist is a guy with glasses and a white lab coat. But there are a lot of women doing science. There are a lot of Black women doing science, contributing quite a bit. In fact, when we had someone on the show during that horrible disease, which we don't like to say the name of, she said that a Black woman helped develop one of the vaccines for that.
That's right.
So there's a lot going on, and I would implore people to put aside their blinders and just see people for people and realize
Mhm.
everybody's got something to contribute,
Mhm.
even the person you might not expect. So that's awesome.
Even radio show hosts.
Right.
So
Elizabeth, I don't know, but
that was pretty funny.
please, Elizabeth, it's time for your project.
So I'm a little bit in a conundrum. So for those of you who haven't listened before, I have a startup. I called it Fireside. I do video interviews of small business owners. And Karen, honestly, it was at first hard to get people to do it, but during that horrible disease and everything we went
Well,
through,
so why
people
are we,
were on Zoom.
Why are we referring to it though as the horrible disease? I mean, we can say it.
I don't
and we
like to
said-
say that word anymore. But anyway,
Okay.
anyway, so people got more confident with it, and I think they looked better than they thought they did. So I did a lot of interviews, and I'm compiling them. I'm getting a new website. I'm still doing interviews, and people will book with me every once in a while. And I forgot because I didn't do some for a while. I really love doing these interviews of these business owners. The people are so fascinating to talk to, and when you get people going about something that they're passionate about, like their business, it's a really great conversation. So I'm still doing my interviews for Fireside, rebranded as Blue Streak, because Fireside was just way too common of a name and there could have been trademark issues. Blue Streak, I think, defines a project better in some ways as well. And then I also started a new podcast with somebody I met at a conference. It's called the Jersey Pod Cats, and it's all about cats. And we have cat lovers on, and we talk about our cats, and we are having a blast with it. It's on all the podcasting sites. Of course, it's a YouTube channel too. So it's the Jersey Pod Cats, and that is
could be a
going very
good
well.
Tagline though for have a blast with cats. Sort of rhymes.
There you go. Oh,
Anyway, somebody should trademark that.
yeah, I should. So now, enough about me. Now I want to go to our next presenter, who is a meditation and stress management expert. Wow, we all need that. Tsikki Thau. And I just want to spell her name if you want to go to her website while you hear us talking. It's Tsikki, Tsikki, Thau.com. So welcome, Tsikki. Tell us all about what you do.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is a blast.
Yeah.
I it's
A
super
blast without cats,
entertaining.
right?
Yeah. I am a stress management expert. I've been in this field for about 30 years now, and I love what I do. And I am some of my expertise are in obviously inspiring others, helping especially CEOs, business people, business mind like people, stay-at-home moms, celebrities to all come to their core and their center because everybody needs help. And especially the ones that say, I'm not stressed, I don't have a problem. These are like my favorite type of clients. And
Who says
Just so
that?
you can prove they're
It's like,
wrong.
who says that?
so,
Yeah, words never heard. I am not stressed. Or-
yeah.
Oh,
So,
Tsikki, can you tell just by looking at somebody whether they're stressed or not, since you've been in this field for a long time?
100%.
Oh,
Yes,
really? So
yes.
do you think Elizabeth and I are stressed right now? You can be
I
honest.
think not because you're passionate about what you're doing
Yeah,
and it shines. So definitely not at this
yeah.
moment.
We're
Yeah.
having fun right now. You should have seen us earlier
Wait,
this morning
yeah, I
in
was
this
gonna
meeting
say
we
wait
were
until about 7 p.m. And
What- Yeah, the one thing that really caught me about your bio that we have here in our notes is that you are a foremost authority in mind over body techniques. And that's something I really need, quite honestly. So, can you explain what you mean by that?
It means mastering, like everybody has the gift. It's not so much, are you this, are you that? Everybody has the gift to master their mind and have control over their thoughts. And I think once you take science and breath therapy together and you put it together, you can master your own mind. Therefore, you can control everything that you're doing. You're in charge of your life and you take charge in every step that you make without feeling, you know, less of. If you're dealing with disease, which a lot of people are dealing with disease, I mean, the mind is controls the body. So if we have more control over the mind, therefore we can heal our body and any challenges that come our way.
that's really great. So, what are some of the techniques that you use to over help people overcome stress?
There are many, many tools and techniques. Like I said, it takes discipline, dedication, and time. However, since I deal with a lot of, such as yourselves, CEOs, attorneys, business people on the go, fast paced, and they say, Tsikki, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time.
Yeah, well,
And
that
I
kind of
tell them, I'm sorry.
I was no, I was just going to say they're are do you think that they're just not willing to solve the problem, or do you think that
I
they're
think
trying to avoid it?
I think they're here too much, so they're not taking the time to understand that time is all they have. And if they utilize their time wisely, they will find the time to calm down, not necessarily meditate. So I did develop a system that takes a minute and a half for you to calm down. And it is 1, 2, 3, it's couple steps, and you are calm. And that is for the fast pacing person that says they cannot meditate.
Well,
That's great.
your systems must work because if you deal with these kind of people all day and you're as
Hmm.
relaxed and calm and happy, it seems like you must be doing something right. Do you have a comment or question?
Well, I wish I would have had your 1 minute system yesterday because I really need it.
Oh,
But
call me.
so just curious. So for someone who has like a busy brain, right? And they're
Hmm.
constantly like overthinking and there's a lot going
Hmm.
on. What tips or recommendations do you have like to kind of get past that barrier of like thinking you can't meditate because you're always thinking about a million other things?
So you hit the jackpot there. It's the thinking that's the problem. If you can just visualize like a stop sign in front of you, for example, and just feel instead of thinking, tell yourself, I need to feel. The second you say I need to feel, you stop thinking because you're focused on a feeling. Kind of like when you see a cute cat or a little doggy. Instead of thinking, oh gosh, what is the doggy doing? You're feeling, my goodness, this is an overload of cuteness. So it's a feeling that takes over versus a thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His feelings are pretty powerful.
Well, I mean, I like lots of times I have trouble sleeping. I have
Mm.
racing brain, and I'm trying to go to sleep, and I'm just kind of lying there
Like last night.
like last night. And so I solved my
It's a
problem by
nightmare.
going and having some bourbon. But I don't like that. I don't want that. Sometimes I'll take like a little half of a NyQuil or Advil sleeping tablet or something. Sometimes that helps, but it really bothers me that I'm not really able to sleep uh, without those things that can't possibly be healthy for me. So, how do you help a person like me, assuming there's hope?
I think it's a common question that I constantly get with clients is, I'm having trouble falling asleep. First of all, when is your last meal? You know, what time does that take place? I think that's important. Second, are you taking magnesium every night?
No,
Because
no.
that helps all the muscles and nerves calm down, and it's the exact minerals that you need to put your brain at ease. And third, of course, whatever works for you, you can find the best calming music, like listen to a podcast, listen to something calming. I like waterfalls and the sound of water
Uh-huh.
personally.
Yeah,
And
so
then test your breath. Where is my breath? In short breath, short life. Long breath, long life. So when you're laying down, take 30 seconds and take a deep breath. If your breath stops by your chest, that means that there's some kind of stress happening, which obviously the brain again is telling you, I'm not calm enough to fall asleep. So then take another breath. If it goes past your heart and starts to going a little deeper down, that means you're starting to calm down. So the combination with the breath, music, magnesium works perfectly.
Wow. We
oh
know
wow,
what you're
that's
doing tonight.
yeah, I know what I'm doing tonight. I'm breathing.
Yeah. So
But magnesium, can you get do you use magnesium tablets or do
Mhm.
bananas have magnesium?
they do.
If you
Um,
eat a banana?
I would discuss that with your doctor or nutritionist because every person has different type of magnesium that suits them. Like you have glycinate and citrate, so and different other ones. Which one suits you best? But I will tell you that it is a lifesaver. It's the best minerals that you can give yourself as a gift for bedtime.
Okay.
Well, maybe I'll go get a couple different kinds at GNC today.
Test them out.
We just
So
pop a bunch of magnesium.
there you go. So Karen, do you want to chime in here? I'm sure you have plenty to say.
Sure. Well, first of all, I have always wanted to be that calm person. And it's interesting that people will often say, oh, you're so calm. And yet internally, I feel like things are chaotic. And you reminded me of what you, Tsikki, when you talked about the feeling that I remember once years ago having a therapist who told me after I shared something semi-traumatic with him, he said, well, where are you feeling it in your body? And
Mhm.
and so I told him, my stomach or my throat, and so well, put your hand on your stomach. And I actually had such a good relationship with him. I said, Dennis, I'm paying you $150 an hour to touch my stomach. Let's get to the point here.
That does sound like something Karen would say, right?
But I have learned that was my first sort of indoctrination to feeling feelings and recognizing now the power of them. And that just opens up a whole new world. So I love the work that you're doing, Tsikki.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. I think, identifying the feelings and then if you just stay with them, they sort of go away after a while, right? They sort of dissipate unless you've got like a lot of really negative feelings. But, a lot of the smaller issues that we run across during the day, if you can just acknowledge how you feel about them and just kind of let them go. But sometimes I can't do that, even though it sounds good in theory, it doesn't always work in practice.
Is that because the logic takes over all the time?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's kind of staying with the feeling part is the hard
Mhm.
part. Sometimes because then all of a sudden that'll trigger some other thought or something. So,
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know what happened last night, but
yeah.
I wanted to go into some more from your bio.
Mhm.
It says you offer private transformation sessions which combine energy psychology, intuitive transformation, and self introspection. So, what is energy psychology?
So energy psychology is basically knowing where the person is, or at the moment where they're struggling, or everybody has some kind of a struggle. So when my clients come to me, it's almost like a radar. Again, it's connection with a feeling, because when you connect to a feeling of whoever's feeling in front of you, I know it kind of sounds strange, you get the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time a client calls me, they need help. They're struggling. I tell you why, because most people that reach the top, it could be abundance. They call me and they say, I feel empty. There's something wrong and I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that simply they haven't dealt with. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. They just haven't tapped into it. So I help them with energy and psychology and the science of breath, tap into that point that's causing them a discomfort or a place of, I'm just not happy. I hear that all the time. I've reached everything. I've reached the top. I make all the money. I've hit all my goals, but I'm not happy. It's this place of emptiness. And this is where the energy goes in, and the psychology again, and that feeling. How do we fill it up so you're back to happy? And it's to do with a feeling. And it's a feeling that a lot of times you don't want to look into. Can be, to do with your childhood. It could be with something you've never dealt before, or it's a complete subconscious thing that you're not aware of. So I just pop the balloons for everybody.
Wow.
And so how do you do
And they
that?
become happy.
How do you
Uh,
do that? I mean, you just careful questions and I mean, what is your technique to help pop the balloons, so to speak?
Again, I feel them out. I ask them a few questions like, how are you? I just generalize conversation, and then I target the issue, and they just lean back most of the time because they have no clue what just happened.
I
It's
think we need a few balloons popped.
You want to get your
Definitely.
balloons popped first, or should I?
My
Should I
balloons
pop?
popped.
Yeah.
No, but that's a great way to describe it, because that is what it feels like, this pressure of what's going on, what's wrong, and then the release when you pop the
Mhm.
balloon, so to speak, and all of it just comes out.
I
You're
feel
right.
a balloon popping right now. Kenya, do you have any balloons that are popping for you?
I do. I popped a few yesterday, actually. No, for me, I pray a lot, and that works really well to pop balloons. So I just think that it's good to have a way to release things and not hold on to things.
Mhm.
In terms of like, say you're going through your day, like what are some tips and tricks, like if you're having a hectic day and you
Mhm.
need to like reset and you don't have a whole lot of
Time.
time on your hands?
Time. I think you just run to the bathroom. Bathroom breaks are very valuable for on the go people, fast pace bathroom breaks. Because when you go to the bathroom, you have 30 seconds to 2 minutes to say, hey, get yourself together, close your eyes for 30 seconds and imagine where you want to be in that moment. Just a quick picture. This is where I'm at. I'm in control. Everything is in perfect order. I got this. Get out the bathroom as you're washing your hands, look in the mirror and just tell yourself, you got this. That's all
So
you need.
are you doing these thoughts while you're going to the bathroom?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
bathrooms are
Okay.
amazing.
Okay. So you're actually using it as intended. So
Well, you're thinking about it and you're doing a physical release at the same time. What could be better?
Yep.
very insightful.
And you're grateful that you can go to the bathroom.
Oh yeah. There are those days.
Just a minute. I'm feeling stressed. I got to go to the bathroom. So,
If that doesn't work and you don't have time to go to the bathroom, then try to just do one little jump in place. Just one little jump, and you shake your hands.
I think
And
I
then you
saw
tell
you doing
yourself,
that right before the show.
it's showtime.
Well, unfortunately, we have to finish our conversation with Tsikki so we can go on to our next guest. But could you please tell us your website again so people can get a hold of you?
Certainly, it's tsikkithau.com, tsikkithau.com.
And in case anybody missed that, our podcast always comes out after the episode, and we have everybody's websites on there. So we are going on to our final guest, and this
Thank
is
you.
something near and dear to Richard's heart. Both of these things. Morgan Hancock has a nonprofit called Bourbon with Heart, and I'm going to let it's bourbon and it's art. And Richard loves both those. But I'm going to let Morgan talk about that. So welcome, Morgan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So bourbon and art and nonprofit. What a combo.
So Bourbon with Heart was created as a way to bring together two of my favorite things about Kentucky. It's bourbon and its artist. So Kentucky's already known worldwide as the leader of the bourbon industry, but what we're much lesser known for here in Kentucky is our rich and vibrant arts culture. And art is extremely important to Kentuckians, and we have a lot of talent here, and we're just not well known for that. So we're using this organization as a way to leverage that existing influence and popularity of the bourbon industry to bring awareness, raise funds, educate people, provide access to our rich and thriving arts culture in Kentucky.
well, that is a surprise to me. I'm not surprised about the bourbon, but I'm surprised about the arts culture. Has it been that way for a long time? Have there been a lot of artists gravitating toward Kentucky, or are Kentuckians just sort of naturally artistically inclined?
Both, and just because of exactly what you said, you didn't know that is hopefully a couple of years from now we will have changed that, and then we will be recognized as one of the leaders in the arts world. But everything Kentuckians, whether it's visual arts, performing arts, we've got multiple movies being filmed. Hollywood movies being filmed in Kentucky right now. I mean, every type of art across the board, we have it here. And of course, we have bourbon, and we like to say that bourbon, a good glass of bourbon, like art, brings people together.
Oh.
Well, and after a few glasses of bourbon, probably find a lot of art you like.
Or you create art you like. So tell us about your organization. What do you do, and what do you do to create awareness, and how does the funding for all this work, and all of that?
Well, we call ourselves Kentucky's first and only arts-focused bourbon charity, and in fact, we could probably say the world's first and only. So maybe you guys could help me out with that, the intellectual property there. I believe we are the world's first and only arts-focused bourbon charity. So we have all different initiatives. Right now, we are doing a bourbon barrel art exhibit. It launches February 1st. That's our unveiling night. The tickets sold out within hours. This particular exhibit is 20 bourbon barrels. Bourbon barrels are large and heavy, by the way. So when I started this particular exhibit, I did not think through how heavy these were going to be. So getting them to the artist home and to the museum has been a struggle. But it's 20 artists, 20 painted bourbon barrels. Every single barrel is sponsored by a bourbon brand or a local company, and that's how we raise the funds. But that's one initiative. We could go on. We got bourbon and Beethoven, bourbon and Broadway, bourbon and ballet.
It seems
Barrels
to be a
elapsed.
common theme is the
Yeah.
bourbon, right? Okay, got it.
Yes, because bourbon is a common theme in Kentucky. It brings us all together. You can't be a Kentuckian without having bourbon a big part of your life.
Excellent. Well, so
Well, I have something from Kentucky that I absolutely love with all my heart and passion. And I didn't get to say this during my segment, but I'll say it now. I went on the ASPCA website to get a kitten, thought he was local, and he actually came up from Kentucky. And he's got a little problem, which is why I started the cat podcast, but he is the most adorable, sweetest little guy. And he's got extra fingers and extra toes.
And if we had met Morgan before, we probably would have called him Bourbon, right?
Good name for him.
Well, I have the perfect, bourbon barrel for you then in this art exhibit, because one of my artists, and I call them my artists because I feel like they're all my children. I'm so proud of them. I'm always showing off their work like it's my kids. But one of the artists painted this entire bourbon barrel. Wrapped all around it is the Louisville, Kentucky waterfront and skyline, but with all different cats enjoying a glass of bourbon, like up in a hot air balloon and watching fireworks along the waterfront. And it's all little cats having bourbon. You would love it. I'll have to send you a photo.
Oh, you have to send me a picture of that.
Yeah, we definitely want to see
awesome.
it. And you remember, this is all in the name of charity. So
Yes.
I think bourbon in the name of charity is a great idea.
Yes.
Kenya, what do you have to say about all of this?
I
Any
was
comments?
curious, and you may have mentioned this, so I apologize if I'm asking this again. What kind of, like, where do the funds go? Like, what type of projects do you fund, and where does the money go to?
Good question. So a few different places. One is other local nonprofits. So for this particular exhibit, we have 3 beneficiaries, other local nonprofits that will receive the proceeds, as well as the artist. And into making these events that provide access to artists who wouldn't otherwise have that access. This exhibit is going to be in a large museum. And the museum is also the official starting point of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. So this is a big deal. These are artists who, a lot of them who would have never had that access otherwise. So the funds go to local nonprofits as well as the artist.
Excellent. Karen, do you have a question or comment?
I'm stuck on the fact that your cat's name might have been Bourbon.
I'll see if we can get a name change.
But I think what does come to mind is I first of all, I love the name Morgan. And when you think about something memorable, catchy, and that makes people want to lean in and hear more, that's what I think of when I first saw your name pop up. It made me want to learn more. So I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And no, you make me nervous now because I know I got a thick accent, and
your accent is a gift.
Yeah,
your accent is a gift. Yes, it's beautiful.
This whole time I thought Karen is judging
no
right now. And I can't say the word museum, and people say, why would, and you have to say it a lot when you're in the art world, and I can't pronounce that word, and I'm also dyslexic, and there's a lot of things, so I gave up on that long ago. I just have to listen how I speak.
I was listening to the radio the other day, and they were saying, do you know people say groceries 2 different ways? They say groceries or they say groceries. And they were saying like the percentage of people that say the word. So how do you say groceries?
Grocery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how do you say Louisville? That's an important question. We say, do you say Louisville like you'd been drinking bourbon? That's how you pronounce it, Louisville.
I'll have to remember that. So how many different kinds of bourbon are there? Is just one kind, or are there more than one?
Oh my goodness. Thousands and thousands of brands of bourbon. But 90%, we say 90% of the bourbon in the world is made in Kentucky. 100% of the good bourbon is made in Kentucky.
So what does it have to be called bourbon?
Some people think it has to be from Kentucky. It does not. There's a certain formula. I can't give you the specifics here, but it is a certain formula, amount of corn versus rye, and but it just so happens that 90% of the world's bourbon is made in Kentucky.
Wow.
Oh.
Well, I hope if there's a nuclear war, they don't target Kentucky, because that would be terrible. So
it is flammable.
So do you have a website where people can look at some of the events that you're sponsoring? I mean, how do you promote these, and Are there events for people outside Kentucky that might be where they might be interested in participating or purchasing or somehow working with you?
All the above. So bourbonwithheart.org. You can find us on any social media, Bourbon with Heart. And yes, so this bourbon barrel art exhibit that launches February 1st, it will be on display for 8 weeks at the Fraser, Kentucky History Museum, but the public can vote for their favorite barrel design during that time, and that will all be online. So you can go to our website for that, and the winning artist will receive a cash prize plus a donation to the nonprofit of their choice at the end of the 8 weeks. So bourbonwithheart.org. And if you come in town for Kentucky Derby, which is coming up soon, we are doing a bourbon barrel bow tie art exhibit, and you can actually purchase these bow ties. These are bow ties made out of bourbon barrels. I know it sounds crazy. When you see it, it'll all make sense. So get ready, bourbon barrel bow ties.
Wow, it sounds like you guys are really out of the box with your creativity. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty neat. So, well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes.
It's been an amazing segment. I've learned a lot about Kentucky and a lot about bourbon, and we wish you all the success.
Yes. So we have to go to a break.
All right.
Thank you, listeners, for listening. Don't go away yet because we're not done, but you have been listening to Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest today, Karen Laos. And what a fun show it's been. All women except for Richard. We'll be right back after these messages. Now it's time for Noah's retrospective. Noah Fleischman is our producer here at Passage to Profit, and he just has a way of putting his best memories in perspective.
When I was 11 years old, what did I want more than anything? One of those consumer VCRs, video cassette recorders, with the great big camera pack, the things that looked like those television news units. Remember those with the big microphone? In those days, those things cost literally over $1,000. We didn't have that kind of money. But I sure did dream, let me tell you. The movies I would make, the television shows I would create. Of course, it didn't occur to me that in order to do those things, you needed a crew, you needed a cast, you needed writers. You needed people to help you make it happen. Well, none of it ever did actually happen, but many years later, when I got online and looked on the internet, I started seeing all of these things that looked like theatrical trailers and promotional films and movies. You know what those were? Those were people creating those things on their home computer software. People as young as 15, 14, creating things that looked like genuine movie trailers that you would see in a theater. Unbelievable. How much of a crew and cast did they have? Probably not too much. With less and less effort, technology is allowing us to create our dream. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes, at this point, I think to myself, wow, with less and less effort and more dreams available, keep dreaming and technology will just make the dream come true.
Welcome back, listeners. You are listening to Passage to Profit, the Road to Entrepreneurship with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart and our special guest today, Karen Laos. And now we are to the fun part of the show with the group discussion.
The whole show is fun. Why is this
Well,
is this like the only fun part of the show?
It's the fun part of the show because I'm the one that thought it up.
Well, that's true. Okay, it's fun for you. Okay, hopefully
So-
fun for everyone
So
else.
we're going to ask everybody the same question, and we're going to start with Karen. So what is one quality of yours that you feel has really helped you in life or business or business?
Confident expectation.
Oh,
That is it. I am always expecting good things to happen to me, and they generally do. So,
wow. That
and
sounds
a lot
like
of times they don't. Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth.
no, I was going to say that sounds like a good one. A lot of times they don't, and then you reset your confident expectation.
Yeah, I mean, because let's face it, not life is not all about roses and all of that. But having the positive, to me, it's about the expectation aligned with a positive outlook. Because I was initially going to say tenacious, because that is, I'm definitely relentless about getting what I want and asking for what I want. But the expectation that when I do ask, people are going to say yes. And then if they don't, then I'll move on to the next person. It isn't something that I let hold me back.
Excellent. What about you, Tsikki?
For me, it's definitely passion, connection, and life experience. I'm very passionate about what I do. Therefore, I am very blessed with connections all over the world. And by connecting to people, I share my message, which is my life experience, the greatest degree I could possibly ask for.
That's
Excellent.
wonderful. Yeah.
And what about you, Morgan?
A lot of bourbon.
I
I don't want to sound morbid with this, but this is a true answer. One thing that's helped me succeed is just not being afraid of the worst case scenario in life, which is you die. So I just go out and just try things, and I just do them because I'm just not totally attached to anything in this life. So it really brings a lot of freedom and confidence if you just think worst thing that can happen is this doesn't work out.
Fearlessness. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Kenya.
God, I can't top that, Morgan. That was really good. I would say for me, it's tenacity. I have a very tenacious spirit, and when I believe in something and I know that it has potential, I put it out there and I will make it happen. So I would definitely say tenacity.
Yeah.
That's a good
Well,
quality.
you made this show happen.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, this show was Kenya's concept from the very beginning. She got us on board, and
here we are 5 years later.
Yeah.
That's
And
incredible.
you, my dear.
Yes, my dear.
What
What do you think they are? What do you think, Mike? Since you know me.
I would say intelligence.
Okay, well,
we can say intelligence.
Sort of.
And I don't think you give up easily.
Right.
You don't.
Well, I appreciate that. I would say my one thing is planning. I'm a very good planner, and so I plan a lot and I work hard. Right. I mean,
You do.
I
You
put a
do.
lot of time into my projects. And so that's a blessing and a curse, right? So
Yeah, it makes me work on weekends with them. All
I
weekend we're
don't
talking
make
about the
you,
No.
but you do. That's
Yes,
nice.
we do.
So.
So I was thinking about this because I was thinking of Max, otherwise known as Bourbon, the cat, who I have now taken to 4 different vets. I'm trying different treatments on. And I think that mine is the same as Kenya's. I think it's tenacity. I am not giving up. I refuse to give up. And one of the vets kind of gave up. And it's like everybody else in the world can give up. I am going to find out how to help this poor little cat quit scratching himself. So
I
there we
would,
go.
since I know you, I would add another one is you're a very good big picture person.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
You see things that a lot of other people don't.
Yeah, that's true.
Not
And
hallucinations, but like big things.
but a lot of times that scares people too.
You scare me all the time in more ways than one, for sure. So anyway, let's do our run through.
Okay, so for those of you who just turned in, our podcast comes out tomorrow, but we had amazing, incredible people on the show. We had Karen Laos, communication expert, confidence cultivator, podcast host, Ignite Your Confidence, bestselling author of Trust Your Own Voice. And you can find her at KarenLaos.com, KarenLaos.com. And she has a lot of secrets that really help people succeed. Like you wonder, how'd that guy make it and not that guy, or that woman and not that one? She has in between stuff.
Yeah, I learned a lot. It was great having her on.
Right. And then we had Tsikki Thau with meditation, who is a meditation and stress management expert. And she had a lot of good ideas and things too. And you can work with her if you need to. And her website is tsikkithau.com, TSIKKITHAU.com. And she is so relaxed and gorgeous. I'm sure that her techniques really work.
I loved her segment. I just loved the way she approached the topic. I thought she was fantastic.
Right. And I think we need to talk to her some more.
You first.
And then we had Morgan Hancock with a nonprofit, Bourbon with Heart, bourbonwithheart.org. And she's doing all sorts of really cool art things in Kentucky and events. And they're having a big art exhibit, and it sounds like a lot of fun what she's doing.
It's very creative. Who would have thought of marrying bourbon and art and nonprofit?
Right.
But it all works together, right?
Right.
So
And
it's
since
really
my
cool.
little kitty Max came from Kentucky, we're thinking of renaming him Bourbon.
I think that's a great way. We just have to change the vet records. That's all.
Oh, forget it then. He's been to so many vets in his lifetime, that poor little kitty.
Anyway, it's time for us to sign off this week, but we'll return to the station next week with another episode of Passage to Profit. And before we go, I'd like to thank the Passage to Profit team, Noah Fleischman, our producer, and Alicia Morrissey, our program director. And our podcast can be found tomorrow. Anywhere you find your podcast, just look for the Passage to Profit show. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, while the information provided during this program is believed to be correct, never take a legal step without checking with your legal professional. That's it for this week. We'll see you again next week on Passage to Profit.